So welcome everybody to the public engagement workshop. My name is Rafael Contreras Rangel. I'm the AIS prevention planner with the DNR, and I'm going to be facilitating the workshop today. Doug is going to be presenting first, so once he goes on, he'll go ahead and introduce himself. But I want to thank you all for taking the time to join us. This is something that we really enjoy. And especially, I want to thank our presenters and our panelists for volunteering and making this happen. This wouldn't be happening at all if it wasn't with all of your help. So thank you. To start things off, I just want to go over the workshop goals. So the goals that we have, you can see them on your screen, is to learn from one another's experiences and also to network with your peers. Some of the expectations so that we can achieve these goals is for everybody to has a responsibility to contribute. Please be an active listener and speak honestly. Share information in ways that can help others be successful. And please be respectful and open to new ideas and new ways of doing things. That's why we're here, because we want to learn from all of our colleagues, and they all have different ideas and different goals. Everyone participates and no one dominates. In terms of teams, some of us use teams, some of us don't use them. So we're just going to go over just a little bit of how to use it. If you're using the Teams toolbar, if you're using the Teams app, you can use the Teams toolbar, which is located at the top right. And if you're presenting, it is going to be hidden at the top of the screen that's being presented. If you're just using it in the browser, it's going to be at the center bottom of your screen, and you have to make sure that you move your mouse to be able to see it. Please make sure that your microphone is always muted unless you're presenting or asking questions. You can also use the chat or raise your hand for the features. You can see the little hand right there on the toolbar to join the discussion. And then I will either call for you or Doug's can call for you so that you can share. So we can start practicing the chat. If you can please put your name, your organization, and something that you're looking forward to do in this warmer weather. Here in the Twin Cities, we've had some great weather. So I'm interested to see what everybody's doing. So again, this is the third of 3 workshops. It's our last one. The first one was on detection, response, and management. And that one, 89 people attended, which is one of our highest attended workshops. The second one was in partnerships, which attracted 80 people. So that just tells you how important these workshops are and how people find them useful. So we're just so happy that we're able to do that. So now that we got that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and talk about our in-person workshops. So the in-person workshops, there's going to be one in the South. That's going to be on March 11th from 10 to 3 at the Chanhassen Library. The backup dates for that is going to be March 12th or the 13th, and that's going to be at the Carver County Public Works Conference Room 1 at Cologne. And that's tentative. That might change, but that's what we have for now, for the backup dates at least. For the north side of the states, we have March 31st. That's 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Crow Wing County Land Services Building at Brainerd. And the backup date for that is April 2nd, and that's going to be at the same place and the same time and location. All right, and now just going to go a little bit over the agenda. First, we're going to hear an overview of the fundamentals in public outreach from Doug, and then we're going to have our first panel, and we're going to talk about how do you plan public outreach. And then we're going to go on a break, and then we're going to come back for another panel on how do you plan public outreach events. And then after that, we're going to have an open discussion, and we're going to go ahead and wrap up. And now that we have that, I'm going to pass it over to you, Doug.
Well, thanks, Rafa, and greetings, everybody. Thank you for attending this workshop and for attending this presentation on fundamentals in public outreach. I am going to attempt to share my screen, and hopefully everything worked out as I had practiced it earlier. Rafa, are you seeing my screen in presentation mode?
Yeah, that looks great on my side.
Great. So I just like to start out with some opening comments. If you're not aware, Minnesota's been one of the most comprehensive AIS programs in the United States since its inception in 1992, and especially concerning aquatic invasive species outreach. And for many years, the DNR, along with me previously with Minnesota Sea Grant, we really led our efforts with partners to become a leader in AIS outreach nationally. And that was because we kind of stayed in our lanes. Learned how to work together, and we also learned the most effective ways to deliver, measure, evaluate, and show the nation that AIS works to raise awareness and change behaviors. I conducted the first comprehensive boater and angler survey in 1994 that showed those results. So that actually then fed into the justification for the development and the implementation of the Stop Aquatic Hitchhikers campaign, which was launched in 2002. But after 3 decades, we really learned that our efforts really started with planning, engagement, partnerships, collaborations, and networking. Much of what we're doing right here today. But we learned also at that same time that we were doing a really good job of talking laterally. And what I mean by that, talking from agency to agency, but we weren't talking up very well and we weren't talking down very well. And that's when we really emphasized that in about 2005, where we really needed to begin to engage partners. We knew that we couldn't do it alone. DNR couldn't do it alone. I couldn't do it alone in my role with Minnesota Sea Grant. So we really need to look beyond that to be able to engage the public with public outreach locally. So I wanted to give this presentation for a long time now to provide a primer on what we've learned over the past 30 years of working to prevent the spread through a comprehensive approach to outreach and also its evaluation. And by being able to show accomplishments and impacts, it's really set Minnesota apart from the other states early on and still today. That said, I'm so inspired by all of your local efforts. As I read through all of your reports and metrics, I'm really struck by the comprehensiveness of your programs. And when it comes to outreach, some programs are like rock stars. You're doing a great job. Several have had outreach programs even previously to the prevention aid, so they had a head start in terms of capacity and skills. Others caught on pretty quickly to develop good outreach programs, and there's still others that have an opportunity to take on outreach with some elements, and we'll hear about some of these programs later on in the workshop. So with the many new AIS staff who have little experience or training in outreach, I'm hoping that the longer standing programs will learn a little more about outreach. Programs conducting some outreach will consider integrating some other elements into your programs to make them stronger. And those that are conducting little or no AIS outreach will be inspired to perhaps move out of your comfort zone and know that the public, in terms of prevention, outreach is really important to prevent the spread. So kind of consider this as a call to action. After all, we know that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And a recent study based on a presentation I attended last week showed that for every dollar that we spend on prevention saves $54 in terms of control, a 1 to 54 ratio. So prevention through outreach is a key. Let's see if it works. There we go. So here is our agenda. It's kind of an action-packed one, but we're just going to touch on these very briefly. We're going to provide an overview of Minnesota at risk, define what the purpose of this workshop is, talk a little bit about extension outreach and its description and how it lends itself to outreach, provide an outreach definition and the different types of outreach that are out there. Outreach versus communication tools, there are distinct differences. And so I'll show you a couple of examples of those. Planning starts at the state and local levels and should include goals, objectives, evaluation, and tools, as well as partnerships, engagement, and collaboration. These are all elements of outreach. Also, we're going to touch on a couple of kind of sensitive issues, and that is one is advocacy, and another one is neutrality within and without our networks. And then talk about a comprehensive approach and related efforts, and then the challenges and opportunities, and hopefully we'll have time at the end of the presentation for question and answers. Otherwise, we'll defer to the last session within our workshop. So with that, next what we'll do is talk a little bit about our workshop purpose. Oops. So the purpose of our workshop is to provide a primer for AIS professionals to improve understanding of outreach processes, skills, and performance in your areas. Again, hopefully with this understanding, you may feel more comfortable in delivering outreach both to adults and to youth, and there are distinct differences between those. Consider expanding your AIS prevention programs in formal, non-formal, and informal outreach settings aimed at positive change in audience values, attitudes, knowledge, skills, and behaviors, and actions to prevent, slow, and mitigate the impacts of AIS across our state. So what's at risk? We're just going to touch on a few of these things. Actually, Minnesota has a tremendous amount at risk due to aquatic invasive species. Our total state population is around 5.8 million. We've got 11,842 lakes over 10 acres. We have 183,000 miles of shoreline. That's more than many states. I think Florida, California, and I think the West Coast. So we have more shoreline than all those states combined. Lakeshore property tax contributions is around 250 billion. Tourism industry is 14.1. We got lots of jobs that depend upon our healthy lakes and rivers. Fishing retail is 2.4 billion. Number of registered boaters, we rank third in the nation with 825,000. We got 1.6 million anglers. Of the people that come here to visit as tourists, 36% of them fish of the 33 million. And 34% of Minnesota's fish. 33 million visitors come into our state, and 36% of them fish. And trailer launch public access is over 2,200. So we're basically the perfect storm in terms of aquatic invasive species. And with only 8% of our water bodies infested at this time, and how easy aquatic invasive species can spread from lake to lake, boaters are taking action, because if they weren't taking action, I am totally convinced that all of our lakes would have been infested over the past 30 years. So great job, boaters and anglers. So in terms of extension outreach, it's an out-of-school sort of system of education. Most of what we do as aquatic invasive species professionals, extension began in the mid 1800s in Britain to take a knowledge of to doorsteps of to the common people. It was formally adopted by the British in 1870 to deliver teaching activities beyond teaching institutions and campuses. The Morrill Land-Grant Act in the United States established land-grant colleges to establish different non-formal education activities. And then it was the Hatch Act in 1887, the Smith-Lever Act in 1914 that established a system of agricultural experimental stations and cooperative extension to educate people about developments in agriculture, home economics, and related subjects, respectively. And since then, Extension has been delivering science-based programming on a multitude of topics, including aquatic invasive species. And I just want to recognize that much of what we have learned about outreach and related to aquatic invasive species has been through Extension, but also there has also been significant activities in the Minnesota 4-H program as well. So again, with the extension outreach, it's associated within universities and colleges, tying research to outreach and usable forms to the public. It has over 60 plus years of proven effectiveness. It has a reputation for attacking wicked problems, including aquatic invasive species. And successes, all of our successes in invasive species have been built upon a team approach. Engagement involves building knowledge, understanding, and skills of community audiences. And critical outcomes are that their science-based questions are properly framed, and to help ensure that information provided is rigorous, credible, and above all, useful. And they are shown on the right as the first exotic species day camp for teachers, which I held in 1998. And actually, it still serves as a model today in terms of how we reach out to teachers and to help develop curriculum to help teach youth and our leaders for the future. So much of what I'm going to be talking about today is taken from a resource called Fundamentals of Sea Grant Extension from 2012. Kind of pulls all these elements together, and I have embellished on that a little bit based on some of my experience. So outreach has significantly changed over the past 20 years. We've gone from an antiquated, what's been termed an information deficit model, and it's been replaced by more effective approaches aimed at sustaining reinforced behaviors. I like to think of aquatic invasive species as being based on two different behavioral models, and one is the theory of planned behavior. and that's been around since the early 1980s. And then also within that, community-based social marketing can provide a framework for the theory of planned behavior to help bring about change from just knowledge into actual behavior change. So as society has changed, so has the approaches to outreach. We work with diverse audiences to provide reliable and technical science-based information to our audiences, and provides information and skills training through virtual and in-person meetings, online contact, guest lectures, meetings, conferences, and other channels. So outreach is a discipline. It's based on a discipline. It's a process of developing capacity of the individuals so that they can adequately respond to their situation. It also brings desirable change in people's attitudes, values, knowledge, skills, and habits. It also can be used in formal or informal settings that reflect how people think, feel, or act. And this is based on a paper by Verma, 2022. In terms of description, it can involve communication involving both mass as well as social media. The description here can be framed in a number of ways, by the way. Education can be both for adult and youth. And so when it is for adults and youth, the actions that provide services, resources, or information to audiences or communities who otherwise might have access, and also provides ways to connect with a community by sharing that information and those services. But it's most effective when it's direct outreach by meeting audiences where they are. And it also builds relationships by working together to address shared issues, problems, opportunities, challenges, or decisions. So just some examples of different types of outreach materials include print materials, website posts, dedicated meetings, trainings, conferences, field trips, public displays at festivals and fairs, etc. It is also it also includes designed activities with a plan in mind that usually it involves advice from other organizations using bottom-up approaches. Can foster sustained behavior change as a result of the science-based information that's provided. Can be developed as model programs that are not just one-off. They're part of a continuing program that continues on. Programs that have objectives with measurable outcomes and metrics. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in depth when we get to it. And we're also uses a variety of education processes necessary to achieve the desired outcomes, such as those one-on-one meetings or larger group meetings, which I just referenced, including workshops, conferences, field trips, demonstrations, print or electronic media, web pages, and also radio and TV shows. And those efforts are locally based, but coordinated with local, state, tribe, business, and nonprofit partners. And there's a picture of Tina at the Minnesota State Fair just a couple of years ago, I think. So there's three types of outreach. The first one we'll talk about is formal. And formal outreach is a systematic, organized educational model with curriculum, objectives, content, and methods. It usually involves an educator or a teacher, and involves students and an institution. And it's based on educational processes that are developed by schools, colleges, and universities. And there's a nice picture of Wendy Kroll at one of the aquatic plant identification workshops that were hosted by DNR and Mazer. So continuing on with formal education or outreach, it's planned with a particular end in view. It's limited to a specific period. It's well defined and is systematic in terms of its curriculum. It's given by specifically by qualified teachers. It includes activities outside the classroom and can involve multiple disciplines. So compare that in contrast to informal outreach, our second kind of outreach. It's different from formal education, although it's usually closely related. It does not necessarily take an organized or systematic view of education. It can be more like promoting more lifelong process, and for which values, attitudes, knowledge, skills, and insights can be taken from daily experiences and exposure. Continuing on with informal, it can be incidental and spontaneous. It can be just on the spot sort of outreach, not planned at all, not imparted by any specialized agency. It can be done by virtually anybody. But also it's not prescribed in certain terms of a timetable or its curriculums. Usually a curriculum is not involved in informal education. So the third type is non-formal education. It's a type that's organized and a systematic type of education activity delivered outside of a formal system to provide selected type of learning to a particular population group. It's derived from the expression of formal education, so it can be directly tied back to formal education, but it's usually outside the realm of formal education. It can be used to raise consciousness and deliberation about a topic. And it can be organized for a homogeneous group, and it can serve the needs of that identified audience. Just a couple of examples. Credits Lake County, Red Lake County for these images, but shown on the left side are education tools versus communication tools or prompts. There on the right, and certainly social media is also part of those communication tools, which I won't go into too much today. So where does planning start? Starts with a state plan. There's an image of our state plan here for Minnesota that was just recently revised in 2022. And it provides a communication, outreach, and coordination and integration among MISAC members and its partners statewide, including all of you locally, to implement elements of the statewide invasive management plan. I did pull out and reference some sections that are most relevant to outreach, and that is section 4, elements, desires, outcomes, strategies, and actions. And under those elements, prevention, early detection, response, containment, also leadership and coordination, priorities for action, and also program monitoring and evaluation. So in the elements of these things, what we're really trying to do is to identify, how we can take these different elements and put them into implementation that we are already supporting. So I'm hoping again that you'll consider adopting this sort of process of aligning what you're doing at the county with that of the state plan. And MISAC expects that the plan will be taken into consideration whenever invasive species is undertaken in Minnesota. And to support the long-term goal, MISAC strongly encourages partners, again, to adapt or adopt principles and practices that allow the objective assessment in the performance of the plan. MISAC plans to evaluate our state plan periodically. I think every 3 or 4 years is what we've indicated to the Aquatic Nuisance Species Task Force. And we'd just love it if we could be able to take your outcomes and be able to integrate that and show how our plan is working. So local outreach, public outreach planning. Planning identifies what we wish to accomplish, then develop a strategy that allows us to accomplishment, either through formal or informal, but it also can be flexible and fluid in how it's being approached. Planning identifies short-term and long-term actions and identifies metrics or milestones that can be used to measure if your activities met those targets. And effective planning and self-evaluation can allow you to determine if you're doing all you can in terms of its positive impacts. And certainly be sure to reflect upon this sort of process on a regular basis. So in terms of planning, planning is most effective when it's based on goals and objectives, and it's even better if you use SMART goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and are time bound. And here's just an example of a SMART goal. By December 31st, 2025, you can see that it's time bound. Our program will convene 10 partners who will produce and promote outreach materials, distribute them to 30 events, and will educate 30,000 people about aquatic invasive species. That's a pretty big and broad SMART goal, but it is one that has the elements that you want within a goal. When developing goals, avoid obscure and abstract statements like, well, we'll increase awareness, oh, we'll increase quality, because those things are really difficult to determine what the outcomes and the impacts would be, and your efforts if it had any influence on achieving it. So more about goals and objectives. They're usually accomplished in shorter periods of time. However, they can be longer periods depending upon what your programming looks like, whether it's based on a 2 or 3 year grant or something along those lines. They could be a little bit longer. But the purpose is to identify what steps needs to be taken to achieve in reaching the goal. And in terms of objectives, I need to identify who your audience is. There is no such thing as the general public. What are the intended behavior changes for those audiences, and what are the indicators of the magnitude of intended change? Say it's 50%. So the objectives should not be about what you will be doing. While the number of events are important, what you have identified to your audience to do is a result of your activities, which is more impactful. So set realistic expectations on the audience size, recognizing it's impossible to reach everyone. So we just try to have to take slices of these different audiences to try to approach them to get them the prevention message. So in evaluation, what have you done for me lately? That's the question that people always ask. And so when we're conducting our programs and we want to be able to show evaluation, we need to be able to show funders and stakeholders. They want to know what we're doing. They want to also know what the return on investment of the public dollars are. And so those are two key questions that, county boards, legislatures, and even partners want to know how we're progressing in terms of our aquatic invasive species efforts. So we must be accountable for their use. We need to show impacts that our programs and projects have on the audience and the resources we target, and use processes that measure to show whether or not our programs have accomplished what was intended or hoped for, and demonstrates what we did to achieve those goals, what worked well, or what could have been done better. It's best not to fly by the seat of your pants. So in terms of evaluation, in terms of needs assessment, that is some kind of pre-activity evaluation conducted long before a program starts. And then there's program planning. So when considering evaluation, there's 3 forms to consider alongside planning, designing, and implementing your AIS outreach programs. Again, these approaches can be applied to your entire AIS program, not just in public outreach. It is necessary that you conduct each one of these types of, it's not necessary that you conduct each one of these evaluations, but the more you do, the more the program will be. So for formative evaluation, it's usually based on the client-based outcomes and impacts, which comprise predetermined desired outcomes. There's a multitude of ways of doing this to gather information from your county boards, task forces, local partners, including lake associations and other AIS programs, and DNR to develop a program that best suits your needs. And based on your reports that I've seen, some of you are already doing this. Perhaps it could be better documented. For those of you who are not, maybe it's something you consider again to make your program stronger in the long term. Formative evaluation usually takes place during the effort and measures immediate impact. In terms of process evaluation, we can assess how well the program was executed. Evaluation will monitor what actually happens during implementation and compare it to the implementation plan, identify what was the most effective. So while the 2 previous evaluations may not seem very exciting to track, summative evaluation is the one that kind of gets me jazzed up because I'm an evaluation geek. This evaluation measures the effectiveness of building engagement and capacity based on audience knowledge, attitudes, and desired proactive behaviors within those target audiences. And summative evaluation usually takes place after everything wraps up and measures the total impact and overall value of the program effort. So one sub-element of summative evaluation is outcome evaluation. And this type of evaluation procedure measures the change in audience, again, such as knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors as a result of the direct exposure of our outreach efforts and communications. Efforts can be evaluated at various levels based on methods implemented at each location. All outreach and communication material and tools can be promoted through various channels, including but not limited to designated AIS public events, non-designated events like festivals and fairs, conferences, workshops, trainings, and other channels, and through partners who may be willing to help distribute. Products can also be promoted through news releases, mass media, including TV, radio, newspaper, e-news, blogs, as well as social media. In terms of the last sub element, and that is impact evaluation. That's another sort of the ultimate impact goal, which is AIS programming to help prevent and slow the spread of AIS by target audiences. So if we do all this stuff, along with changes in personnel and organization behaviors, we may not have the impacts that we want. So how do we track and identify those? So I'm not going to go through this entire table, but this is an example of outreach mapping that I've been using for over 20 years to help drive my programming. So in terms of this outcome map, it's based on logic mapping. And a logic mapping, there's a number of different ways that you can lay out your logic map, but this is the one that I think applies best to aquatic invasive species. So you can make it simpler or as complex as you want. There are also many different forms of logic mapping that I was trained in and has worked for me. So for now, just look at the column totals and we'll discuss what those mean with a couple examples in each column. So for the first example, for the first column, we can track your number of partners within a program. You may have multiple programs, so you have multiple tables to help you track your accomplishments, outcomes, outputs, outcomes, and impacts. The second column is inputs, which is the estimated amount of resources to prepare and deliver activities. Inputs can be direct funding, leverage funding, other staff time, in-kind sources of support, including volunteer hours, their travel and programming, which is now estimated at $36 an hour. You should be able to put a monetary value on each of these so you can better track how much you are leveraging in terms of funding. The third column is outputs, which includes the types of and kinds of activities, including from conferences you hosted to business meetings you held, number of booths, requests filled, number of products produced, number distributed, those that have been purchased for distribution, number of releases and story pickups by mass media, newsletters, and e-channels. An important component for each category is the estimated number of people educated or reached via exposure to communications. So column 4 is really about tracking partnership engagement and commitment based on outputs in column 3. And based on your engagement, how likely will they partner with you? Develop metrics, endpoints that will help you track whether their awareness, knowledge, and understanding skills or behavior changed. And the bottom part of the column is very similar, but it can help track changes in your collective audiences. Column 5 is just a subset of outcomes in number 1 and number 2, but it's more about tracking the level of deeper to sort of reveal what the partner's engagement commitment is based on what they've been able to leverage or their in-kind costs based on outputs. It can be anything that you are able to try to place costs associated with that project. Column 6 is about impacts. These are where things get really the deepest in terms of accomplishments. The ones that have brought about positive change, sustainable changes. Impacts can include the number of partners, the number of colleagues using improved management outreach strategies. If you're doing that, it's suggested to do that now. In terms of the number of colleagues using the same brand, number of impressions generated by partners, changes in communication and outreach based on the most effective methods shown in surveys, changes in reported awareness, knowledge, attitudes, skills based on reported or observed behavior studies. And the grandest of them all is if you can track and report behavior change over time based on the exposure to your program, changes in allocations and research for outreach, dollars leveraged to in-kind resources, and finally cost savings to partners. For example, if you join a large production run of some kind of aquatic invasive species outreach tool, that can be a savings for taxpayers. The last column is just for comments related to meaningful discussions, positive comments, anecdotes, and other qualitative evaluation outcomes. So with this, I'm only suggesting that you track these aspects of your program in some way because you can show how you are investing in the public outreach and at what levels you're tracking your effort with outputs, outcomes, impacts in mind. So I know that was really a lot to take in, but I've used this very successfully in the past, and I hope that it may help you to track your endpoints as well in terms of public outreach. So evaluation, it involves who, what, when, why, and how. So who is anyone who wants to know the strengths, weaknesses, gaps, successes, and failures of a program. The what is planned process that determines accomplishments. The when is during and after a program is completed. The where is based on location of the life of the program. It could be a one-off evaluation based on maybe a workshop or a training session, or it could be the life of a program over a period of several years. What's really important to consider there is that if it's over the life of a program, it doesn't have to be over the total audience that you're trying to reach. It could be just a subset of the audience, or it could be like a post evaluation after a workshop. Were the attendees awareness? Did it increase? Did it increase behavior change? It doesn't have to be totally comprehensive. And why to do it? Well, it shows that you're making a difference, including positive impacts or benefits to your stakeholders. And how? Well, there's no one single approach. It really depends upon the audience, the program, and the resources available. If you'd like more information about that, I'd be happy to answer any questions after, at the end of this presentation or at the end of the workshop or later on. So in terms of just touching on engagement, it's a basic principle of commitment through service with our partners and our stakeholders, and certainly involves programming and also involves communities in which we engage. But importantly, when we're developing this engagement and partners, we're trying to partner with those that have similar goals, objectives, complementary skill sets, or maybe not so complementary skill sets to fill a gap, or additional resources to enable more robust AIS outreach programs. And the audiences, they can be individuals, they can be one-on-ones, they can be community groups, they can be local governments, nonprofits, and businesses. Remember, when we're entering into these types of partnership, that credit is infinitely divisible, meaning that should always give credit to your partners where credit's due. So in terms of the elements of community partnerships, delivery is best avail is delivered based on the best available science. It's most easily used and understood by the community as when it's most effective. Engagement is not events, it's about a process. It's based on trust, reciprocity, shared goals, integrity, honesty, and familiarity. And that trust is built over time. It's not overnight. And so sometimes it takes extra trust building, especially if there's baggage associated with it. We do live and work in the communities that we serve, and that's I don't think we have to stress that to this group, because you are all working in your communities that you do serve, and you are the face of aquatic invasive species in your communities. And above all, partners must be involved in the planning process. And here's just one example of my former colleague, Marty Kitson, who helped staff a booth at the White Iron Chain of Lakes Association booth at the Ely Blueberry Festival. And that was integral in terms of our partnership, which remains strong about 15 years later. So in terms of engagement roles, it involves the development and delivery of traditional programs. It can involve facilitators, neutral information brokers, and conduits of information via our networks. Just remember that any element of your program, whether you're involved with early detection and monitoring, and other elements, they can all serve as conduits for AIS outreach. So again, in terms of roles, it involves bringing together community members to resolve issues amongst ourselves. Can be formal or informal, less structured and timely. Importantly, we provide an intangible product that's bringing together partners together to address the challenges of aquatic invasive species, and certainly inclusion makes us much better. So in terms of collaborations, our efforts are reaching towards similar goals. It makes sense that we work together collaboratively because we have similar issues. The formats are similar: workshops, community programs, festivals, fairs, and webinars. Joint programs are encouraged at the watershed scale because we know that aquatic invasive species don't understand watersheds, and they don't understand political boundaries. And so working at multi-county levels is certainly beneficial when appropriate. And successful collaborative partnerships will depend upon compatibility of the goals, program coordination, credit sharing, as well as knowledge transfer. So here's a couple of topics just to touch on very briefly, and that is advocacy and outreach. And it's really an art and science. Oftentimes we're asked to advocate for something, and the art part of it is understanding how we maintain our reputations as neutral experts who bring the best available science-based information forward while still serving our constituencies. Each of our organizations and partners are different in how to approach this. Sometimes there's pretty strong limitations on what you can do depending upon your agency policies. But one commonality that we have is to remain neutral in how we apply that knowledge in developing public policies. So when considering conducting any advocacy work, make sure that you check with your supervisors on this and for any agency policies regarding it. But what neutrality does, it prevents us from becoming partisan in the public policy decisions, and that's where we really need to go when it comes to aquatic invasive species. We can bring forward and inform folks, but we may not be able to influence any kind of policy decision or advocate for that policy decision. So advocacy continued by involving ourselves in the discussion of AIS management. Have we become advocates? And the answer to that is no. Outreach about matters of importance does not make us advocates. And much to the contrary, we have the responsibility as public servants to go where the findings take us and do our best to educate about what is proven to be true about important issues around aquatic invasive species. And we all collectively have the technical and ethical responsibilities to translate our understanding into language that the public can use and advise officials and those who use public water resources. And just an example of that is the Stop Aquatic Hitchhikers campaign. We can advocate for the use of Stop Aquatic Hitchhikers because it is for the public good. So just a cornerstone of our outreach efforts related to Stop Aquatic Hitchhikers and Clean, Drain, Dry. Just want to emphasize that there's the communication message, which is over on the left-hand side, which is clean, drain, dry, or dispose. And the educational messages, this one for motorboaters, emphasizes what they need to do in terms of actions at the water access. And these are based on the Aquatic Nuisance Species Task Force guidelines that were in the Federal Register back in 2014. And it was the committee that I helped chair that developed guidelines for 6 different types of activities related to recreational activities nationally. So in terms of neutrality, just checking the time here, looks like I got about 15 minutes or so. Based on the AIS management we conduct, we all have our opinions on how to best do it. We all take ownership and commitment to the work that we do in terms of to do our reach and reach our conclusions. However, if it's about a particular policy alternative that is in the best public interest, there are many other voices that have the right to be heard, even if they lack our scientific sophistication. So what I'm saying by that is that while we have, we're often trained in natural resource professionals, we have the science behind it, but we also need to keep an open mind on how we approach aquatic invasive species management, and particularly how we do outreach. So neutrality is often very important in how we approach this. Networks. We know that we are all very well networked across Minnesota, but it's absolutely key in our successes in AIS management, and they're attributed to the commitment to engagement, networking, cooperation, and collaboration. For those of you that have attended UMIS conferences in the past, at every single one that I've co-chaired, I've always emphasized that any success that we have achieved has all been because we have collaborated and we have cooperated to achieve those goals. After 10 years of service by the counties, I think we can point to this achievement, showing that the networking from local, tribal, and state levels works. It's made us strong, and it's something that we should be very proud of. Formal and informal networks, how can we support you more? As both for Rafa and I and other DNR staff, is it through developing more mini networks? Is it more input from peers from other states, regions, etc., just let us know how we can help support your networks and across the state of Minnesota. So another element that I just wanted to bring in here is that the Minnesota Invasive Species Advisory Council, which was established in the early 1990s as the Council of the Interagency Exotic Species Task Force, is a larger network that we have in Minnesota statewide. The council was formed in 2001 in response to the Presidential Order of 13112 on invasive species, and it called for the development of a national invasive species management plan. Also, we know that the Minnesota legislature has encouraged both DNR and Minnesota Department of Agriculture to develop a state plan to take action on invasive species. So we had their support. And so in 2001, began to form this network of 40 members from federal, state, tribal, and local management agencies, businesses, academia, research, as well as nonprofits. It's really a diverse group with common interests battling invasive species. We do meet quarterly, and it's an open meeting. So I know that several of the counties have been attending the meetings, but I just wanted to make sure that all the counties are aware of this council and know that it is working, and aligning with your work in terms of implementation from the state level with the implementation of the state plan down to the county level as well. And there's also another network, and that's the DNR Statewide Aquatic Invasive Species Advisory Committee, which Rafa and I co-facilitate. It was formed in 2012 by DNR Commissioner. It advises the DNR to improve prevention efforts. It has 15 members and 5 ex officio members, bring a range of personal and professional experience. Our charter describes our purpose and scope, membership selection, roles, and responsibilities. What we try to do in terms of membership is select folks from demographics from across the state from each one of the 4 regions. So we have a strong relationship with folks all across the state of Minnesota. What the advisory committee does is review field operations, programs, research policies, and outreach. And this group meets January through April. So there's 4 meetings in the winter, spring, and then we go on recess for the summer and then begin to meet again in monthly meetings from August to November. And again, these are open meetings as well. So counties are certainly invited to participate in these meetings as they wish. So in terms of comprehensive outreach and related issues, and targeted science-based communication, outreach, and education is really important. It can be provided both virtually as well as on the ground. You can distribute existing as well as new AIS outreach materials. We have many outreach materials that are out there and that are being used that are well over 10 years old. And while you may initially think that those outreach tools may be outdated, well, maybe they are, but sometimes the use of those outreach materials, if there are no other ones like it, it's better to use them than not to use them at all. Certainly events like festivals, fairs, consumer and trade shows and relevant events are certainly appropriate places for us to get out those messages. And then also we want to make sure that we're promoting the use of monitoring and tracking reporting tools like EdMaps, which the DNR strongly supports in terms of reporting new sightings via that tool. And that we integrate also community science, provide volunteers with the resources and training to help AIS detect AIS, use eDNA sampling to better understand distribution of aquatic invasive species, contact MAZERC if you're interested in partnering with them and doing that, and also train volunteers to collect and remove aquatic invasive species like mystery snails. I just heard of an effort of people physically removing mystery snails, and they've removed thousands of pounds of them in the province of Ontario. So in terms of a comprehensive outreach, I think a really good approach to this is to convene AIS-specific working groups, support state efforts to control or eradicate, lead monitoring and control, where you can in partnership with DNR or other authorities, install watercraft cleaning tool stations, watercraft inspectors tell boaters it's free and show them how to use. Those are the 2 barriers in which boaters have expressed on why they're not using them, is that they don't understand that the stations are free or how to use them. Install alternative AIS tool signs, where they're damaged or missing, and create and train invasive species hit squads, provide virtual training workshops, develop new resources with BMPs on removal, mentor removal, monitor removal site for reestablish, and track the amount that's removed. And that could be a metric also that you could report in terms of your efforts, and engage your partners to help support the efforts. So kind of coming to a close here, our challenge is as society changes, AIS professionals will need to adapt and use their unique capabilities and skills to prevent the spread of existing and new AIS statewide. Our challenge, again, is today and into the future. Programs will need to rely upon the philosophy of using planned programs focused on outcome-based objectives to affect behavior change. And our opportunity starts at the state level. We need a strong statewide network of organized local educators aimed at strengthening and broadening AIS prevention outreach. And I think we really need to start thinking boldly on ways the counties can secure and sustain yourselves. That is through, association of local AIS county programs, which can provide a voice through themed committees, through outreach training, but also through awards and recognition, which could provide more visibility to AIS programs statewide. So my final thoughts on all of this, and I know there was a lot to take in there for many of you that have not been exposed to outreach and on public education training, but let's have hope, because we're very well positioned to raise awareness and influence positive behavior change to prevent AIS spread. So with that, that is my last slide, Rafa.
Thank you, Doug. That was a great presentation, a lot of great information. So we got about 6 to 5 minutes for questions.
Anybody have any questions? Trying to get my presentation to get off screen. It's not working. There we go.
Oh, whoops. I do, Raphael, if no one else does at the moment.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so my question was, this one generally for Doug, but I guess for anybody else, if anybody had any, I guess, negative feedback from some of the outreach letters that we've been sending to the governor's office, when when you're talking about that, the balance between the advocacy and neutrality sort of thing, there was a lot of contentiousness around supporting the current AIS budget and prevention funds. Just trying to see how, in that specific instance, you and maybe Raphael felt as AIS professionals in that circumstance, or if there's been any pushback from community members as far as that, those letters being sent out.
I myself have not heard any negative feedback from those, but they also just gone out. There are a number of letters from a number of different groups. The Statewide Advisory Committee has issued a letter of support for the prevention aid, along with the Minnesota Species Advisory Council. Wildlife Forever has another letter that's been circulating that has over 56 signatories. And also Minnesota Lakes and Rivers advocates have also got a letter that's been circulating through their networks as well. So I've not heard of any pushback. Rafa, have you heard of any pushback?
No, I have not heard any either.
We may be just too early in the process, but we may not hear anything anyway. We don't know.
Yeah,
good
that's
question.
The hope. Yeah, thanks.
Doug, we have a question in the chat. Okay. It's what, in your experience, is your least effective method of outreach, which we'll be trying to avoid?
Oh, that's a great question. So I mentioned a couple times in my presentation how outreach has evolved over time, and I kind of can draw a line in the sand. It was right around 2000 where we were using information deficit model approaches that if we provided information to the public, they would automatically get this information and they'd be just so motivated to take action that they would just based on that information. But the limitation is that we weren't telling them how they should act. And so that's when we really began to look hard at like the survey that I referred to that I conducted in 1994 and 2000, and then more surveys that I conducted in 2006, 2007, and so on and so forth. We identified in each one of those surveys where they got their information, where they said they got their information, but most importantly, we asked them what were the best sources for information, the top four. And as time has progressed and as we've been doing these surveys, we've seen a convergence in terms of the number one sources they are getting their information, and those are aligned with the best sources. So communication is one of the major sources for information. Yes, they are still getting their information from TV, radio, newspaper, as well as magazines. So that can vary from state to state. Um, so mass media communications is important. Certainly, social media is very important. Particularly blogs are important in getting that message out, where there can be more deeper discussions. But they also take a lot of time and effort to also try to manage. Um, and so there's a whole variety of different things, but signs that water access still remain our number one source in terms of communication. But on the flip side of that, education materials, flyers, brochures are still remain popular, though I have seen a little bit of a decrease in terms of um, pickup at events that I was doing pre-COVID. And so that was kind of an indicator that more people are probably getting their information more online than ever. Good question, Aaron.
So it sounds like there's nothing in particular that should be avoided. It kind of just depends on what you're trying to get out there, right?
It really does, and it's
Yeah.
really situational based. It depends upon whether or not you're trying to target a specific audience in a specific area. Then maybe some of the things that don't show up in terms of implementation at a statewide level may not maybe those approaches would be better to use. Um, I can reflect on one piece that I can bring forward here, and that is back when we launched Stop Aquatic Hitchhikers in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. Wisconsin was using some billboards. We had the most billboards of any state here in Minnesota. We had 38. They only had 6 billboards in Wisconsin. And when they conducted their Badger survey, that went out statewide, and the results showed that only 6% of the people surveyed recognized billboards as a source for information. Well, that didn't align with the particular audience. And so it's what's really important when you're thinking about the methods that you're using and how you evaluate it, you need to make sure that you're evaluating as directly as you can the audience that you're targeting.
Okay, thank you, Doug. There were some follow-up questions for that, but we're right on time. So we just
Okay.
want to continue moving forward. And if you can just answer those on the chat when you have the time.
Thanks.
So
Thanks,
now
everybody.
thank you, Doug. We're gonna move on to it's gonna be a panel, and it's gonna be how do you plan public outreach? So I want to invite Megan Weber from MASERC, Zach Burnside from Wildlife Forever, and Amanda Weber from Cook County SWCD to turn on their camera so they can get ready. And I'm also gonna pass over to Doug. He's gonna be the facilitator for these panels. You're muted, Doug.
There we go. Well, good afternoon, panelists. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise and thoughts. So, let's see, we have Megan going first. How do you plan public outreach? And we'd first like you to describe how you plan your efforts. And is your efforts built on a multi-year or an annual plan or a yearly plan?
Great. So, yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Weber. I'm an aquatic invasive species extension educator at University of Minnesota Extension and the Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center. And yeah, so our efforts are generally, we have kind of a calendar that we operate on. So each year, we know that there's a set number of programs that we plan to offer. And do some annual planning around those, usually kind of towards the end of the prior year. Yeah, let's see. Was there anything else that you were looking for in that question, Doug, or just kind of?
Yeah, just gonna go round robin. We'll go
Okay.
to Zach next to describe how you do your program planning.
Yeah, sure. So, my name is Zach Burnside. I'm the Invasive Species Program Manager with Wildlife Forever. If you're not familiar with us, we're a national nonprofit organization based in White Bear Lake, Minnesota. And we've been facilitating clean, drain, dry outreach for just about 20 years now. And we kind of serve almost as a marketing agency for invasive species outreach. So we have developed a lot of assets for different social media strategies and other billboards and print and TV and radio, and have a lot of these pre-built assets that have been developed over time and can be used year after year. But then we also do a lot of partnerships with our county partners, our SWCD partners, our lake association partners, and they have specific goals that they want to reach each year. So we take kind of what we've developed in the past and modify it each spring in conjunction with our partners and put that out into the field each summer on an annual planning basis.
Thanks, Zach. On to Amanda.
All right. This is what I use. I'm assuming you can see it. It's just a calendar, right? It says the month and some stuff I need to do each month, and then I can look at it and check things off.
That looks terrific. All right, we'll continue on with our round robin. For the attendees, I did put in a series of questions for our panelists to discuss. They don't have to answer all of them. You can pick which ones are your favorite ones you want to talk about, and build off of those questions, and maybe build off of each other's comments. So the questions are in the chat. Megan, would you like to go first?
Yeah, so this is number 2 about developing work plans then.
Yeah, so it'd be the questions 1 through 5 that are in the chat.
Okay. Got it. Okay, so so I'm sorry, Doug, but so you're wanting us to go one at a time, like you want me to give an answer to number 2 and then let it go around and do number 3 and go around, or am I just kind of like going through the whole gamut all at once?
This is really ad hoc, so it's
okay.
how we really want to make it. But I know there's more questions there than the 3 of you will be able to answer given our time frame.
Megan, I think you should just go and give your whole spiel.
Okay, I will do that. I'm going to give a whole spiel. I will, try to not take up too much time. So what I'll say, so the way that our program does outreach, I'd say is a lot more of the type that's like planned longer term events. So not so much of like a table where you might have shorter interactions with lots of folks, but we have longer interactions with a smaller number of folks, if that makes sense. We do a lot of like educational trainings. We do like early detection events and like webinar or other kind of training type educational programs. And then we have kind of like long-term volunteer programs. For those, and they're all like, I consider them all to be kind of like bigger programs. We don't do as much of like maybe small is not the right word, like single event things. So we have kind of long-term programs for the most part. We do some that are some like ad hoc stuff. But the bulk of my work is around kind of maintaining these long-term things that we offer every single year. And we do have work plans around those and goals and objectives and things that we try to measure and evaluate based off of that. It depends on the type of program, what that might be. Sometimes like we might give folks a test and measure knowledge gain and say like, okay, great, people learned something and they showed us that they learned something. Sometimes because of like the types of programs that we have, it means that we also are able to collect things like emails from everybody. So it gives us an opportunity to do other kinds of evaluation that kind of get at some of the other questions about like how that information ultimately got used. So we send out lots of surveys to folks who take our programs. I know lots of you have taken them. You've probably seen our surveys. I love it when you respond to those. Thank you. But they, you know, like it gives us information about like how what you're using is being used. And that can help us both say like, are we meeting our goals? Or also it can help us kind of set some new ones and think about like how we need to adjust our programs to meet goals. How about I stop there? I'll come back later.
I have a follow-up question for you, Megan.
Yeah.
So, so it sounds like you've got a really well-developed program there, and I know that you do. But each one of your projects have a work plan associated with it, and so you probably then have set up different benchmarks or milestones that you're trying to achieve, and maybe you could just comment on those and that how they might be similar or how they might be different, and is there a way in which you possibly develop sort of a standardized way to measure all of them in some way, shape, or form?
Ooh, okay. Good question. So yeah,
I know I struggle with that when I have multiple grants.
Especially for ones that are really different, like our kind of programs that are maybe like the shortest of interactions, like Starry Trek would be an example, right? Where folks show up and they're participating for maybe like 4 hours, and then are kind of done for the day. And our outcomes there are maybe more towards like number of lakes searched or something like that, versus something like if we teach an aquatic plant ID workshop in partnership with Department of Natural Resources, our goal is a knowledge gain, maybe more so, or like how people are applying that knowledge gain. So some of those are challenging. I think some of the things that we can kind of tie together, I try to ask questions about like, how much do you think you learned, or do you think you're going to apply something that you learned in some way? And that, no matter what kind of event they're participating in, I think can translate, right? Like you learn something when you do Starry Trek, whether it's, like I learned how to survey for aquatic plants. So, okay, do you plan to use that now outside of this event? Or like, I learned how to identify some plants, and now are you able to apply that? So some of those questions, I think, yes, we are able to take and create some measurable goals that can go across the breadth of the program. And some aren't and are maybe more specific to some of the smaller ones. Did I capture everything that you asked?
Thanks, Megan.
Okay.
Zach, on to you.
All right.
Thank you.
Like I kind of referenced in my answer to the first question, a lot of our overall work is planned in the future. Over the winter time and the off season, we're looking at new strategies and how those can be used to meet specific goals. We put outreach out into the field in several different capacities, as I mentioned, in billboards, at gas stations in the form of pump toppers and gas station TV, and wrapping the ice boxes and decals on the windows and countertops. And then more on the digital side, streaming TV and radio ads, geofenced and targeted Facebook, Instagram, and Google ads. So a lot of these kind of strategies and how they can help meet goals, that kind of thing can be planned in advance. But then a lot of the actual work plans for the year can actually pop up very quickly. We're planning a lot of our campaigns between January and April each year, but really whenever someone needs help, we're able to help them whenever their time frame requires. I'll give a couple examples of some partners who are here on the call today that we've helped to support some of their outreach. Ariana from Meeker County is on the call today. Last year reached out to us looking for support running some specific geofencing campaigns on specific areas and lakes in Meeker County. She had different time periods in mind for each, different outreach messages in each. She wanted one area to be more clean, drain, dry focused, another area to focus on dry scented mussels, and another area to focus on starry stonewort. So we take the general idea that we came up over the winter, take the actual goals that our partners come up with in the spring, and then translate those into the field in the summer. Another one I'll mention, Russ from Candy-Ojai County is on the call today, and he handles a lot of his own local outreach, but wanted some support with that digital geofenced marketing. And one of his goals in Candy-Ojai County is to drive traffic to his decontamination station. And so we know that social media ads are the best driver of clicks. As opposed to, you can't click on a billboard to get more information and things like that. So we're running social media ads in Candy-Ojai County because we know that get clicks, and then we have those users redirected to Russ's website on the Candy-Ojai County page, which has more information about the hours of operation, the exact location of the decontamination station, and of course why that is important for the users in that area to use. One more that kind of emphasizes how quickly we can adapt some of these campaigns is over the winter. Actually, here we ran a Keep It Clean campaign on Mille Lacs. Of course, it was made a state law last year that all trash and waste needs to be removed from the ice by anglers. And we had been running this campaign all winter, and then our partner came to us on a Thursday and said, "There's a big event happening this weekend. Let's boost the campaign and put a little bit more resources into it to reach all of these extra people that are in the area." So, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of work plans are developed ahead of time, but then we can still adapt and change as necessary in the middle of the plan.
Thanks, Zach. Amanda.
Very similar to Zach, I guess, in that lots of planning. And then sometimes you just gotta do pop-up events when the weather's right and there's people down in the harbor. So there's a lot, like January and February, I get the dates on the calendar for all the events for all the events really, but especially the ones that have multi-agency collaboration so that they can hold that for their field season and make sure that all their equipment is sanitized and ready to go. Yeah, sometimes the events happen on the same day each year, like the same weekend, so that's just easy to plop it in. As far as work plans with goals and objectives to help my desired outcomes, I have never done anything very formal, and I just started, like maybe most of us here, like this position, I was hired to start this position and I had no idea what was happening, and I just kind of started winging it. So we've all learned from each other and partnered and learned how to, like, well, there's a template and you can actually be organized and have desired outcomes, which Doug has taught me at Sea Grant a lot. You helped me. Yeah. Let's see. Outreach tools that I use that I think are most effective are having preserved or 3D models of the specimens. Done.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, thanks for bringing up the preserved specimens or 3D models. I've been at events where I've not used preserved specimens, and I only get 25% of the foot traffic that I would have expected if I would have had preserved specimens. I've had people visit, like at the boat show, and they'll go like here at Duluth, they'll walk like 2 or 3 booths down and away from where our preserved specimens were, and turn around and come back because they saw something that piqued their interest, and is definitely the preserved specimens. So they are definitely an attractant at public events. So just looking at the time, we got a few more minutes here, about 8 minutes or so. Let's go back in reverse order, but we'll start with Amanda. So you mentioned, I helped you out in terms of sort of getting your feet on the ground, doing outreach in Cook County. Do you think that there's a need, that's question number 5, Do you think that there's a need for further training to help you sustain or improve your aquatic invasive species, or have you, I know you've grown tremendously over the past few years, and how you do outreach, but do you think that training could benefit other people across the state, our local partners?
I do think that the training that Sea Grant did for seasonal interns to
Yes.
staff booths throughout the Arrowhead
That would be one
was,
type, yes. Mhm.
yeah, that was instrumental to, at least for me, and I'm sure all of their knowledge, just to get comfortable with the talking points and to have kind of not a script, but just to know what to say. So you're not like on the spot communicating with people at your table.
Mhm. Maybe, could you also comment on, how that network really helped, was beneficial both ways? When people were staffing booths and we had experts at the booths along with Lake Association with folks that were less knowledgeable, and how that benefited that relationship going both ways.
Yeah. I guess in the Arrowhead, the Lake, Cook, and St. Louis County, it's cabin country, it's tourist country. So every weekend there's some sort of festival going on. So having like a group of people that can staff that booth, so one person isn't there for 5 days at a festival, it's really helpful. And then having that interagency talk and like this network of people and then we formed the ABC group, the AIS Boundary Waters collaboration group. So like every connection and partnership just goes further.
Thanks, Amanda. Let's go back to Zach.
Yeah, so further training, I think, is never a bad step to take. For us personally, the AIS outreach part is all for the most part of what we do. But based on the number of counties that are coming to us for help with this type of work, I certainly think that training would be beneficial as related to AIS outreach. But I think at the same time, it's an issue of capacity. A lot of the partners that are coming to us are counties that have maybe one or two staff dedicated to this work, and they might have several other hats to wear that are related to invasive species or are not related to invasive species. So I think that beyond the training, capacity increase is something that we could all use. And I think a lot of what Amanda was saying rings true of these collaboration groups, from the ABC group to MESAC to attending UMISC, and all of these opportunities to get together with other people doing similar work and other people doing different work. I can learn a lot at all of these events about identification of species. That's not something that I'm an expert at all. But then I can also share a lot of information about outreach. So I think that any opportunity you have to get into a group like those that I mentioned or others where you can share information, I think that's it's always a good thing.
Thanks, Zach. Megan.
Yeah, ditto all of that. I think, I'm a huge fan of professional development, and there's always like new things to learn and other things or ways that folks are doing that, like I haven't seen or thought of before, that are really fun and cool and awesome ideas. So yeah, especially in like, a changing landscape in terms of messaging and technology and things like that. I think there's really cool things to learn. And yeah, like Zach mentioned, all the ways to like learn from others and other things people have tried. I saw a question in chat and I'm gonna reply to it real quick too. I saw the question about getting preserved specimens, because I agree with Amanda that having like a thing is so helpful in like making stuff click for folks.
And I asked Megan where she got hers from. So that's how I got.
Yes. Yeah, so where they came from. So we used to have like actual preserved specimens, and we actually have very few that are like actual preserved anymore, and we have moved on to pairings with artists who have recreated things for us, and they have been much the color holds longer and better, and in some cases they're like more durable too. So I use both. I use one artist who does 3D printing. So we have fish and crayfish that go through that artist. And then she hand paints them to get the color to match. They're lovely. And then for plants, I actually use an artist who hand creates paper crafted plants. I'll put the link in her. She has a website with a link that I'll put in, and then I can give contact information for the person that we go through to get our 3D printed specimens. But yeah, we're getting in a whole new set of fish from her right now. So I absolutely love the fish and the crayfish, but like they're fun ways, and they're a cool thing to look at. And like people are willing to touch the fish versus like before when we had dead fish, like less people wanted to touch them, it turned out. So yeah, I'll drop this in.
We got about 2 minutes left, Doug.
Yeah, do we have any questions from the audience? They can take themselves off mic to answer them, or if we have any questions in the chat.
Let's
Any
see.
questions?
Griffin has a question on recommendations for tabling activities that are both playful and informative for youth. I borrowed this idea from Bill Granch's, but you have to have a little bit more space, but you can do like tennis balls, and you give each kid a tennis ball. Is Bill on the line? Can he just say this? Anyway, yes, there are ideas, and we can talk offline. Do you remember that, Doug? It was at the AIS workshop last year in Brainerd where he had the tennis balls. Maybe Tina remembers too. And then like each one that collects it has to throw it back at Bill, and then he becomes an invasive species, and then he gives them back to a couple more.
Yep.
Just any excuse to throw tennis balls at an adult.
Yep. He also has the spin wheel that he has for kids though to win prizes. And he also does isn't he online? He could explain this a lot better.
I don't see him, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Well, he also hands out mustaches to kids. I believe it's part of a trivia contest, and kids just love mustaches. So he gets them very involved.
Other people have made like the face cutout where you're like holding a carp and there's a fisher person with a like.
Oh, DNR a few years ago made a hat out of a silver carp that you could get at the DNR office at the Minnesota State Fair. And there were kids all around and adults too, wearing this silver carp hat all across the state fair. It was pretty cool. Oh, Kelsey says, created a great game for young kids. It's Spidey Waterfly Tag, modified sharks and minnows game. So with that, I see that we're just 1 minute over into our break. So Rafa, we should take a 5-minute break. So maybe come back then at in about 5 minutes. So 2:31.
2:31. We have it until 2:40.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, that's right. We changed that. Sorry. Yeah, we have a 15-minute break. So let's just round it off at we'll get back together again at 2:40.
All right. Sounds good. And thank you all for our panels for your time. We really appreciate it.
Yep. Great job.
Hey, Doug, this is Abby Hoffman. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Oh, perfect. I've been having a lot of technical problems today, and towards the end of your talk, my computer decided to shut down and update and
Oh, boy.
all the fun things. So
Yep.
perfect.
I had that happen to me this morning, but unfortunately, it was first thing, so.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Yep.
One thing is it says that I'm an attendee, so I cannot share my camera, which isn't the biggest deal at all. It might actually help with internet, but if
Oh.
we want, I think it has to be changed over.
Yep, I just changed to you.
Perfect.
I
Yeah.
must have missed you. Sorry about that. Yeah, now
No,
you should
that's
be able
fine.
to share.
I came in and out of the meeting about 5 different times. So
Oh, that's why. That's why. Okay.
yeah.
Well,
Great. All right.
if it happens again and you need to get off, just send me a chat or just let us know, and I can quickly make you a presenter again.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much.
And we can try sharing whatever you need to share right now to check if you like. We're on break,
Yeah,
so
let's do that. So share.
oh, let me stop sharing for me. Yeah.
All right. It says I'm sharing. Can you see?
We can see your screen. Yes.
Okay. And now in presenter mode.
I am still just seeing your screen. What about you, Doug?
I am not
Yeah,
seeing.
right now we're seeing the Teams window, so we're seeing just the Teams window. Yeah.
Okay. Let me try share.
If you put your presentation screen, Abby, on your laptop rather than maybe using a monitor, that sometimes will fix that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on a laptop. When I go to share, it asks if I want to share my Chrome tab, window, or entire screen.
Oh,
Hmm.
that's a new one on me.
What did you try last time when you shared it right now? Did you do the entire screen or did you do the Chrome tab window?
I did the entire screen.
Okay.
Maybe. Yeah, I'll just try each one. All right. Do you see?
Now I can see it. Now click presenter mode just to make sure that it works. But I can see. Yep, there we go. It's working
Perfect.
that way. Yeah.
All right, we will do that.
So how did you fix that?
So when I went to share and then screen, window, or tab, I actually think the first time I did window, and so this time I did entire screen.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
For future reference.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm glad we got it working. And if do you need anything else? If not, we'll see you at 2:40.
Yep, that sounds good. I should be all set then. Thanks for checking this with me.
No, I mean, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
I'll see you soon as well, Doug. I'll just be off camera.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey Doug, and can you guys allow me to share as well? This is Sarah.
Yes, I'll make you a presenter right now.
Thank you.
Let me just find you. All right, you are now a presenter and should be able to share and turn on your camera.
Yes, I can. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Rafa, I think that most of the questions did get answered in the chat.
Okay.
So we should be good to go there. If folks could give us a thumbs up that you're back, that would be helpful. Good number of people today, Rafa, 66.
Yeah, and I think it was up to 72 at some point. I'm keeping an eye on it.
I missed that.
Yeah. Well, you were busy facilitating, so and presenting. All right. So we are at 2:40. So at this time, I'm just going to invite our next panelist. They're going to be discussing how do you plan public outreach events, and that's going to be Carl Koenig from Becker County, SWCD, Abby Huffman from Winona County, SWCD, Sarah Soderholm from Murray County, SWCD, and Liz Anderson from Lake County, SWCD. So if you can all turn on your cameras if you can, and then I'll hand it over to Doug.
Sure. Thank you, Rafa. Appreciate that. So our basic question is, how do you plan for public outreach events? And I have put in the chat for panel 2 the questions, same sort of format. Our speakers can address any one of those questions that as they so choose. So let's start out with just one second, my agenda went away. We'll start out with Carl.
Hey, Doug.
Hey, Carl.
And hey, thanks so much for all the work you've done here with these meetings. They've been going really well. I've been really impressed with how everything has gone so far. And thank you for inviting me to share a little bit today.
Thank you.
For those that don't know me, my name's Carl. I've lived in Detroit Lakes since 2014. I started working at the Soil and Water Office here when AIS Prevention Aid was first came into play, and the district here created an AIS program for the county. Over that time, we've done a number of different events, and I will say, to me, the most effective events are those where we work with someone else who's really the host of the event and kind of align and build an AIS message into that. And also working with MACERC on a couple of events too. I find that extension is trusted. Extension is a trusted source of information by people in my community, and people are enthusiastic to see what extension has to say. When people see that extension is doing something, I see people respond to that. So for ideas of having a successful event, one idea, and it's been a couple of years, but in 2018 and again in 2022, we invited the researchers from MACERC here to this region of the state. I'm in Detroit Lakes. To talk about what they do. Talk about any updates from the research center, similar to what they do in St. Paul, but bringing it out to greater Minnesota. And they were very generous with their time, sent their staff up here and provided a great presentation. Most of the work in setting that up, the facilitation was kind of taken care of by Otter Tail County, Hubbard County, and Becker County Coalition of Lake Associations groups. So that's a partner to think about. And I'm sure you all have interacted with lake associations in some way, but the COLA groups, the Coalition of Lakes Association groups, I was so impressed with how robust of a COLA group they have, both in Otter Tail and in Hubbard counties. They provided so much work, so much resources, and the attendance of those events were both very high. Now, if I had an event where I said, I'm the AIS coordinator, I'm going to share with you my plans and my goals, I wouldn't have had nearly that much interest or response. So I don't want you all to, you know, overwhelm Megan and the MACERC folks with ideas, but if you can get a regional event like that with MACERC involved, it might be something to consider. You know, and have them come to your part of the state, use their popularity and their strong branding to get people in the door. And in a similar vein, what we do for youth is by aligning with the City of Detroit Lakes Water Festival. They have an event where all the fourth graders from the schools all over the county, really, not just City of Detroit Lakes, but smaller communities, tribal communities, all send the fourth graders to a big community center gym type place in Detroit Lakes, and they learn about everything from natural resources and environmental topics to like municipal wastewater, anything water. And I've got I went way back. I think it was like Sea Grant, California, or someone had a youth activity related to AIS that I adapted to kind of a fourth grade level of understanding. We do a quick activity at the Waterfest, and it's hard to measure how effective that's been, but I think, you know, research supports teaching kids about this stuff. I feel like I still remember environmental messages that I learned as a little kid, like catchy slogans and things. And it probably changed my behavior, changed my knowledge, certainly. Um, so, yeah, I guess in short, try to package your message into what established people are already doing. Definitely, I should shout out Dakota County. One thing that I use that I think improved that youth outreach, and something I use for all age groups, is a set of display panels. I think I saw them on something the DNR put together, like a list of accomplishments for the year. But I contacted Emily in Dakota County. She shared the graphics with me, and I had these big, like 4 foot wide display panels made that really show a healthy lake ecosystem in like a cartoon illustration type way, with fish and different kinds of plants, a healthy lake, and then another display panel that shows a bunch of Eurasian milfoil plants, some carp, some zebra mussels, and they're big and they're colorful. They catch your eye, and I think it's information that I know is accurate and isn't making any kind of a outrageous claim or claiming that, you know, the sky is falling or that these invasive. It sticks to, I think, our mission as a SWCD, which is maybe not to always be the technical expert, but to find good information and apply it to a local problem or local situation. And I found those display panels to be helpful. I don't want to oversimplify the, you know, complexity of AIS, but I think in Detroit Lakes, we know about invasive aquatic plants because of the flowering rush situation. There's on the Detroit Lake. So people here are leery of invasive aquatic plants. They know kind of this legend and folklore of milfoil and the management of milfoil in the Twin Cities metro area. We don't have right now, you know, big milfoil management projects going on. It's not been detected in, you know, Becker, Hubbard area, Otter Tail County either, I believe. So I find focusing on that invasive plant message gets a lot of attention from people. So I lean into that. I talk to people about invasive aquatic plants. It's an economic concern that we all dealt with in the city of Detroit Lakes. The flowering rush was a very expensive project that the watershed district here pursued. And I just get a lot of traction with that. I feel like that the conversation moves along and people think, yeah, I don't want a big problem with invasive plants in the lakes around here. So.
You're muted, Doug.
Yeah, sorry about that. Said that when I blew my nose. So anyway, yeah, let's come back to display materials at the end. I want to talk a little bit more about that, but until then, let's turn it over to Abby.
All right. Hi, everyone. I have a small presentation for you. I'm going to try sharing my screen. All right. Confirmation that you see my presenter mode.
Looking good.
Awesome. All right. So hi, everyone. Again, I'm Abby Hoffman, and I am a conservation technician with the Winona County SWCD in southeastern Minnesota. So I just have a few slides to go through with you today. So to start off, I want to talk about kind of what audiences and finding outreach opportunities that you might have in your county. So I put together a list of main points to consider when identifying your audience and event. It is not all inclusive by any means, but somewhere to start. So first, know your funding limits. I think this is self-explanatory and often the number one thing on people's minds. But knowing your funding limit tells you a lot and tells you how much time, capacity, and resources you can put into your event. So things like, can you host an event, or do you want to piggyback on an event that's already existing? It also tells you how many people you can plan to reach, especially if you have giveaways at a tabling event or anything like that. So for today, I'm going to focus on being a part of a smaller event instead of trying to go down the rabbit hole of hosting your own huge event that takes months of planning. I think that would be too much time. So next on the list, finding the gaps and groups within your community. So is there a certain group that's often left out? For example, in Winona County, we found out that the homeschool groups have never been contacted to have a visit and discuss AIS before. So they are now a great contact that we have, and I visit them at least a couple times a year. Additionally, is there a group already looking for presenters? So for us, this is schools in our county. Most are often looking for outside visitors to discuss topics that they might not normally touch on, like AIS, or they just want us to visit during their environmental unit. This gives the teachers a little break along with mixing it up with their students. So we've had a lot of really good success with this, and we now have a lot of connections within schools within the county. Next, research to see if there's already planned local events and reach out to them to see if you can have an AIS table there. So would it actually fit in with their theme? Ask them if there's still room to join. I have never been told no yet, so knock on wood that continues. But they're always excited to get more topics and tables at their events. If there's room, they want to fill it. So also tell them what you can offer. Tell them the materials you plan to bring and can provide the attendees. They always like brochures and giveaways and things like that. So for me, this is probably one of the easiest ways to have an outreach event with the smallest amount of prep time. We just keep a tote full of our tabling materials and I'm just able to grab it and go. So the biggest point is reach out to anyone and everyone. So whenever I find out about a new event or group or person that may create a new connection, I reach out and just see what they say. Sometimes I don't get a response back, but if I do and we create that connection, it's usually a lasting one. So for example, with finding how we go to a lot of schools. So every year I create a personalized flyer and email it to the school at the beginning of their school year. So on here, I summarize what events that they can register their students for, along with what we can present on if they want an in-class hands-on visit. Ultimately, be open to putting yourself out there is my best advice. You may get turned down, but that's okay. You will get more yeses than nos. And especially if you tell them that your visit is free, they really like that. So now I kind of want to go through and show you one of our most popular requests that we do get from schools. We've done this with preschoolers, elementary students, middle school students, high school students, and adults. You just have to change your terminology and length of the game that best suits the group that you're doing this with. So the game is called AIS Musical Chairs. We do have a terrestrial part and we combine them together, but I'll just focus on the AIS side of this today. So I don't have time to go into all the details, but the gist is that we first have a discussion. We talk with the audience. We start off with asking them questions and explain what classifies a species as invasive. What are the pathways of introduction? How they outcompete natives, and just all of those aspects. After the discussion, we hand out these cards that you see on the slide in the bottom right and top right. Oops, I'm gonna get into that later, pressing buttons. So we hand these out, and after this discussion, we have 9 invasive species and 18 native species cards. We made them, we had them laminated through a local company, and they have been working great so far. So we play musical chairs where we start off with all native species and slowly introduce the invasive cards. At the end, there's all 9 invasive species cards out there. So each time a new invasive species is introduced, the person that is representing that species reads off the backside of their card that explains to the group what the species is, how it's transported, and what harm it causes. We then have another discussion at the end of the game as to what they could have done differently if this was a real life situation, and maybe their favorite lake is now primarily invasive species. So we try to connect it with their real life. We're saying often, you know, they're in the circle, you guys are the shoreline, in the center is your favorite lake. Just making that connection to them, I think, is important. So we have had a lot of really great success with this game and kind of outreach. One extra tip I will say, though, is that with the older students, they have a harder time answering questions because they get more embarrassed and nervous and all of that jazz. So if you're at a high school, bribing them with candy usually helps. Also, some of the best discussions I've ever had have been with 4th graders. They're not afraid of speaking out, asking questions, and they will just continue on, and we have really good conversations. So really briefly, and it was kind of already touched on, so I want to talk about some events where if you have a table with AIS materials at it, what I have personally found to be most effective in starting conversations, and this was kind of discussed earlier. So first, I would say these epoxy specimens or preserved specimens are the star of the show. 90% of the time someone comes up and they ask what they are, especially if you have the sea lamprey or the crayfish, they go pretty nuts over. You can usually get into what they are, why it's important to know what they look like, and what to do if they ever find one. So they're really fun. I don't quite know where we got these. I just started about 1.5 years ago and they were there at the time, but I'm looking into getting new ones because these are starting to get a little foggy and yellow. But so next, everyone loves giveaways. So a lot of these either come from the Wildlife Forever or we get them custom ordered from a local business here. So we have brushes, hooks, bobbers, cooling towels, neck gaiters, license holders, sponges, boot cleaners. Usually we have our kind of main group of giveaways, and then every year change up a few items too. And then we also started getting a spinner, so one of those big spinners that was discussed earlier, to the events, where in order to actually get a giveaway, you need to ask us a question, a relevant AIS question, which usually gets a really good conversation going, and then they can spin the wheel, and whatever they land on, that's what they get as a giveaway. And then third, I would say everything else on the table would be like the monitoring items, like the zebra mussel shelves, the crayfish trap, and all of that is they get asked about pretty frequently still. And then the Fish in Minnesota poster, I always get at least 2 people that ask if they can buy one. So those are still conversation starters that are really good. So to finish up, I want to really emphasize the point of making consistent connections. So reaching out to summer camps, classrooms, local events will get you connected. And if you are connected and have a relationship with these teachers and coordinators, they will often ask you to come back either annually or quarterly. I would say a little less than half of our AIS outreach events are what I would consider random visits, kind of like when the homeschool group comes and asks us to give a presentation during their environmental unit. While more than half I would consider actual consistent annual outreach events that we know we'll actually be a part of. So we have 8 annual events that we like to table, kind of like Earth Day. We have one, and hopefully adding a second summer camp where we take the day with them. And then a junior high class we're visit quarterly, which I'm actually going to on Friday. So by making these connections, you can become a consistent presence that continues to increase the chance these community members remember you and AIS. So just making these connections, I think, is really, really helpful. So here's my contact information. Love to answer questions in the Q&A section as well. And hopefully that all worked and my technology was not mean to me.
Thank you so much, Abby. So I'm looking at we're at 2:59. We will still give plenty of time for our two last speakers. Let's turn it over to Sarah. Sarah, you are muted.
Sorry, give me 1 second to get my
Sure.
presentation up here. So, there, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Take it away.
So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Sarah Soderholm I'm an environmental technician with Murray County. So when Doug asked me to speak on this panel, I kind of looked back. I've been at my current position for about 7.5 years. I thought back to what all have we done since I started? Everything from, like many of you, workshops, presentations. We've been at local events, fishing tournaments, county fairs, lake association meetings, new camper packs, advertisements, press releases, flyers, and ran the gamut of what we could and couldn't do as far as public outreach to a certain extent. So for those of you that don't know, or aren't familiar with the Southwest, Murray County is right here. We're my county. We have 2 big lakes, both infested with zebra mussels, kind of in the north central. Slayton, which is where my office is right there in the center, has a population of about 2,000. Murray County's is about 8,100 is the population. In my community, it's not unusual for people to commute to surrounding counties, Marshall, Worthington, Pipestone, and specifically in our lakes area, we regularly have people that own homes from Iowa, South Dakota, and things like that, just because from my county, you can basically get to both of those borders in about 30 minutes, so not very far at all. We also have basically one kind of small lake association that covers both the lakes. The rest of the lakes are basically like little community groups and things like that. So why am I telling you about my county? Because in order to do things like this, in my experience, you need to know who your audience is. My target audience or my population here in a very ag-based economy is going to be quite different and is unlikely to be the same for the rest of my panelists here as far as that goes. For example, down in this area of the state, our residents are more likely to use Sioux Falls, South Dakota TV stations for news than the Twin Cities. If you didn't know that, it'd be very easy for you to spend your money on something and you're not going to hit your target audience as far as that goes. We also in our office, after we do other outreach events, we try to kind of circle back and look and see, who attended, how many attended, and kind of review like what was our struggles and how could we improve as far as that goes forward. So in my mind, the big question that Doug wanted me to answer is, how do I plan my outreach events and what's the most effective? That kind of fit in the best. To me, the question my answer is it depends. If I'm trying to hit a very targeted event for like a new infestation or a fishing tournament, it's going to be very different than what I do with my more general education with a much broader audience. So for example, in 2018, when we had our first infestation on Lake Sarah, we did kind of two main outreach events. We did one more targeted at the entire county and one more targeted at the lakes area. We did utility bills, kind of informing, inserts informing everyone of the new infestation, or as much as people read those type of things. We went around and posted flyers and things to get people to volunteer to have their docks searched. We also did things like when Brady, the AIS dog, came down to search Lake Chautauqua right across the highway there. We contacted our newspapers and said, hey, and the DNR and said, hey, can we have a demonstration and get this in the newspapers? We wrote our own press releases and did all those sorts of things that would be different than an event that I would do at like our county fair or things like that. Those type of events are very different because it's a hot topic, a new infestation, a fishing tournament. It's something that the people that you're interacting with are much more invested in than, let's say, at like a county fair. So for me, those events, while I do my education, I always try and tie in a kind of incentive. We do like a AIS quiz for our fair, and they're entered to win a Yeti cooler. We're looking forward to this year doing having a presentation, hopefully, and then doing like a meal voucher or a meals to get attendance at our presentation as far as that goes. But that's kind of, I guess, my perspective. And if I had one bit of advice for anyone new starting out in outreach, I would say plan your outreach based on who you want to reach and what you want them to know as far as that goes. So with that, if anybody has any questions, I'll take questions.
Thanks, Abby. Sorry. Thanks, Sarah.
That's okay.
Let's move on to our last speaker, Liz Anderson.
Hi, everyone. I probably don't have to take up too much time because I will just be echoing a lot of what everyone has already said, because they're, great minds think alike, and we've kind of figured out that a lot of these things work. But yeah, I'm up in Lake County, I'm a neighbor of Amanda, who spoke earlier. So up on the North Shore of Lake Superior, kind of in the middle of the Arrowhead. Our audience is, our local permanent residents, but we also have a lot of visitors, tourists. So we kind of choose different events that will target each of those audiences. And then we also have youth that we try to target through schools and youth groups and things. But I would say that I do very few events that are completely solo. Like the others have said, it's a lot easier to kind of piggyback on an event that's already happening. And you have a built-in audience, you have a built-in network for promoting the event, and the recognition of the organizer of that event. So that's both for the organizing and planning and promotion of the event, but also for coordinating with partners to help staff the event. So we look to a lot of our AIS partners in the area, lake associations, other volunteers that we've kind of built up over time. Our neighbors, Amanda helps me, I help her. And then St. Louis County on our other side. And the DNR helps to staff quite frequently as well. So we're also always very grateful to have our partners. Because yeah, like Amanda said, sitting at a table for 4 days in a row for 10 hours a day is a lot. Your face kind of gets frozen in a grimace. And yeah, what else did I want to say? I would also want to say that we have our kind of regular annual events that go on the calendar every year that we know we can plan for, but also try to be flexible and open to new things and keep a lookout for what's on the community's calendar, new things that are coming up. Also just kind of odd collaborations that I never would have considered in the past. We have one with the school where we do a Swedish crayfish party. Now it'll be our 3rd year. So it's kind of in their wheelhouse of promoting folk traditions, and then we use it as a tool to introduce the AIS topics around rusty crayfish in the area. So that's been really great. I was also asked last year to introduce a film at the Ely Film Festival because it was related to sea lamprey, and that was something that was never on my radar, but it was a really neat way to get in front of a full house audience at the State Theater here. So yeah, I think in terms of like outreach tools, again, I would say the specimens are great. We bring them to every event because for one thing, they're really small. They pack up really nice, and so you can just like throw them in a tote and bring them. And then one idea for a kids activity that was asked earlier is if you have room for a small boat, we've done have the kids put on inspector vests and then do inspections on a boat, and you give them kind of like you do for the watercraft inspector training, but you give them a vest and you give them a clipboard and you have them find invasive species that you've spiked the boat with. So that one's pretty fun. Yeah, I think that's all I got.
Thank you, Liz. And you've also used live specimens as well, using rusty crayfish and mystery snails, and those have been huge attractions for the events that I've helped you out with. Haven't seen any questions in the chat. If people have questions, please unmute yourself and go for it. Griffin.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. Just a quick one for Abby, actually. Just talking a little bit more about your classroom activities that you've conducted at your conservation district. We're trying to do something similar in Sherburne County. It's always a little bit difficult to go about it, as in, do you want to have a list of activities that you can implement and then talk to educators about, hey, we can do X, Y, or Z? Or do you ask these teachers what you would like from them, and then they give you X, Y, and Z, and you may not be able to conduct those activities? It's kind of like the chicken or the egg sort of situation. So wondering how you go about those teacher-educator, relationships.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So what we do is, I mentioned that I send out that kind of, we call it conservation connections, and tailor it towards the schools. And on there, I have what events we have going on that also don't relate to AIS, so our safety day, poster contest, things like that. But then we have an AIS portion of like the musical games and things like that. So we offer them the X, Y, and Z, and then they can reach out to us and say like, hey, I would love to do this. That is just kind of at least giving them the option to choose one. And then once we establish that connection, I ask them afterwards and continue the conversation of, hey, how'd you like it? What would be different? Is there anything else that you would love to see? So one of them was, there was a class that wanted to actually go to a lake in Winona and use some of our monitoring tools. So that's something we didn't offer them, but they loved the idea. And we gave them our equipment to use for the day, and I picked it up at the end. So it's something that I think giving them specific options makes it so at least you can say yes right away, instead of them coming to you and you're not able to do it. But then afterwards having that conversation to see if there's anything extra you can do for them.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, folks want to ask? Take yourself off mute. There's also lots of chatter going on in the chat about preserved specimens. So I have a question. For those of you that have been involved with youth education, have you attempted to align your curriculum, if it's more of a formal curriculum, with the state standards? Okay.
My predecessor had an education background and she created some curriculum that's available to teachers. I personally have very little background in education. I've kind of outsourced most of my education projects in the county to our grant program, through our grant program. But I'm personally wary of doing anything that's around the state education standards.
Sure, that certainly can be a challenge. My master's is in education and I've done some alignment. It's not my forte. I don't do it enough. And so when I'm challenged to do it, I really have to dive in with both feet to do it again. And I've done that for the RiverQuest event that's happened every May since 1993, and we've had a booth there on invasive species, and all of the stations, which there are 12, have all of their curriculum aligned with the state standards. And that helps the teachers justify having their students go out of the classroom, but they can also show, based on their syllabus that they turn into their principals for approval, they're helping to meet the state standards by going on those field trips. RiverQuest, by the way, is in its 33rd year, I think it is, and we've taught over 30,000 sixth graders in the Duluth Superior area since 1993. Very successful program. I think it's the longest standing shipboard education program in the nation.
I'll
Anybody
just
else?
add, I don't do anything with the state standard. It's one that when I talk to the teachers, I tell them like, hey, I think it would be best if we schedule a time when it fits into your curriculum and it makes more sense for students.
Mhm.
So sometimes they just want to get you in when they have an open slot, but it best fits. Like with our quarterly visit to a junior high class, he the teacher always has a environmental couple weeks and a few days on invasive. So that's when we fit it in and he fits it into the curriculum to justify that visit and all of that jazz. We don't look at the state standard. It's something that we kind of leave up to the teachers and use their kind of judgment with.
Thanks, Abby. I'm going to put the link to RiverQuest in the chat. And you can see what that's all about. Boom. Okay, not seeing any hands. Russ asks, what grades are you typically targeting? I'll do a quick response, but I want to hear from our panelists as well. And then we'll go to just an open discussion for all of our speakers. Curriculum has been developed for all grades P through 12. I have found, based on my experience, the greatest success in reaching out, as has been mentioned, fourth graders, fifth graders, and sixth graders, because it's at those points, based on the standards, that they have gotten the basic content and they start to be able to build their skills and learning capacity to begin to put together the associations between those things, so that therefore they can begin to understand what the impacts are on the environment, on society, maybe not so much on the economy at that point, because they're too young to really understand economy, but they can understand how they affect people and affect them. So be happy to hear from the other panelists what grades you have been involved with and you think are most effective.
I can start. So I would kind of mirror what Doug said. I will go to any class that will have me, K through 12. I've been to a preschool, so really any grade, but my target, if I really had to choose, would be towards that fourth, fifth, sixth grade. I think the conversation is a lot more open. During my presentation, I mentioned that that grade is just more open to asking questions and sharing their stories and thoughts and what they find outside. Some of the things that we discussed during that AIS game is, okay, who's come across this species? What did you do? And things like that. And they're usually excited to share their stories. When you get into the high school level, you can use more specific terminology and might be able to get more in detail, but they're not as excited to talk with you about it. And then we've also noticed with fourth, fifth, and sixth, they're usually the ones that go home and tell their parents about it, and which then gives that information to their parents who might also not know the information, and they look into it. So when we have tabling events, it's usually the kids that draw on the parents, and they're like, hey, mom, dad, look at this. It's so cool. And then that's able to get the information up there. So I would say target would be fourth, fifth, and sixth, just based on all of that and the conversations we can have.
Thanks, Abby.
Yeah, I would agree. Our Waterfest event is for the fourth grade level, I believe. That's where I've found the best interaction and how I design my interactive activity. I don't know that it's aligned with the state's education standards, but when I asked teachers if it is, they indicated that yes, it was. I don't know how closely. Maybe they just kind of felt sorry for me and wanted to thank me. I don't know, but I think it's pretty close. And if anyone wants more information about that, or pictures, or ideas for interactive activity for that age level, feel free to send me an email.
One thing you could do is, if you do know a teacher, they could help you do the alignment for future use. I'd be happy to volunteer, but I don't want to volunteer for 83 counties.
I'll also mention that if you have an event with that age range, so for example, we have safety day for third graders, and then we have a poster contest with fourth graders that talks about natural resources and why they should care. Going back year to year and trying to target them and seeing them, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, really makes them remember us more as they grow older. So it's something, one visit they might forget, 2 visits they'll more likely remember you. So we always try to get in there more, and then year to year as well. So I think that's important as well.
Thanks, Abby. Well, let's use our remaining time, which is technically 9 minutes, but we could go over a little bit. We originally slotted this entire workshop for 4 o'clock, but when we put together the agenda, it just went to 3:30. But we want to be respectful of people's time. But again, we can spill over a little bit if we want to. Let's open it up to the entire panel. Anybody have any questions for any of our speakers? Jeffrey makes a really good point in the chat there about using negative language as evil or bad, or using militaristic language, like you're waging war on invasive species. Tim Campbell from Wisconsin Sea Grant and his colleagues have shown that militaristic language is not as effective as taking a more scientific approach. Anybody have any other comments, questions? I'll just say a couple things. Just be sure when you're using imagery that you are portraying the actions you desire and not the actions that you don't desire. Research has shown that using injunctive norms, which are the actions you desire people to take, are much more effective than showing the negative descriptive norm. In terms of displays, I wanted to come back to Carl on his point. Having a very attractive display and making your display set, sort of step out and stand out from the rest of the displays is absolutely critical, especially when you're at larger shows like a boat show or a home show. That can really help draw people in if it looks like it's professionally done. So having backdrops, which I've heard now that there are some that have produced some backdrops and are willing to share them as models, that's terrific. Zach, do you also produce still the table banners, the vinyl table banners for the front of tables?
Yeah, we do of all sorts, banners, retractable banners, the stand-up banners, tabletop covers, all of that, and we can customize those as well.
And we found those to be also very effective. Having a banner on the front helps get the message out, but it also conceals all your display materials that you don't want seen in your boxes and boxes of materials underneath the table for distribution.
I'll add that at some of the tabling events for some displays, we've made some games that draw people in a lot too. So we have a board with a bunch of different species of fish, and we have all native, and then we have 3 invasive carp. And the game is if you can flip up and find the 3 invasive carp, you get a prize. And it kind of works for all age ranges, because even adults that have their kids there, the adults have no idea, and it's really fun to talk them through that. But then if you just have a young child there that comes up, you can give them tips. You can be like, well, with our pictures we do, the eye always looks the same for the carp, so we tell them like who has the same eyes and things like that, so you can really tailor it to many ages. Amanda Gentry at Winona County came up with that one, or at least made it years ago, so we're trying to make a bigger one too. And then some other things, just Google Google you can find some really weird things and incorporate it to be AIS, even if someone else made it that is a different theme. So there's a lot of weird options that you can come up with that draw people in.
Thanks, Abby. And I see Jessamine has put in the chat to feel free to reach out to DNR for participation and helping to support public outreach events. Jessamine and her watercraft inspectors here in the Northeast have been very, very helpful to have at booths. Also, if you can get conservation officers to come, a badge attracts, especially when they're in full uniform. That brings in people like nothing else, because they're coming in to ask not only about aquatic invasive species, but also, other law enforcement issues, conservation issues. We've still got a few more minutes left here. Oh, Mike Scott. Mike Scott is a retired CO here in the Duluth area, and he retired now. Oh, it's been about 5 years ago. Yeah, it was a really fun guy to work with. Between he and I, when we teamed up in a booth, we definitely maximized our visibility in more ways than one. It was a good time. And we got some interesting questions.
Yeah, I'll just add to DNR has lots of boats too. So if you're struggling to find a boat for a seek and find activity, if you involve DNR, oftentimes they can find a boat somewhere to bring to the event.
Yes, and I did used to bring my boat down to Licks Pier Days, which is the third Saturday in July, and that was it's placed in front of Canal Park, the Licks Pier Marine Museum, and that was also very much an attraction. And I took the signs, the assembly of DNR signs, and placed them all around the frame and on the tires, so people were getting the prevention message that way, even if they weren't stopping into the booth. And then on my downriggers, because I'm a Lake Superior fisherman, I have downrigger cables, and I'd have the cables out, and I'd take cotton balls and make little fake spiny water fleas on the fishing line and downrigger cables. Alicia says she has a toy truck and trailer from Cabela's. It draws tons of kids to the table.
Oh, sorry, Doug.
Oh, they said they're probably interested in seeing if you're giving them away.
I'd be interested to know how many of you guys have the vehicle wraps. I know I've seen a couple of them out and about. Anybody on the call have the vehicle wrap for their program? I know. No?
Yeah, there are several, including Bill Granchies from Itasca. I think Lake of the Woods has one if Mike Hurst is on. And maybe Outer Tail. Beltrami. Thanks, Steve. I knew there was another one out there.
That idea in the chat of a toy truck and trailer, I have tried that too. It's a very good idea. This was a long time ago, but I was working with the folks at Lund on a more like a larger and more realistic miniature boat, and they were helpful, but at some point it was like too much of a time investment for them, and the idea kind of stopped. But it does bring in a lot of people. People just love models and miniature things, and that's been used for promotion and advertisement forever, and I thought that was really effective.
That artist that was brought up earlier might be able to make you a little model of that. Yeah. What was it? I was thinking of something else and now I can't remember. Sorry.
Amanda just put in the chat, would it be possible to get some photo examples of displays? Yes, I have lots of photos of displays from various venues from all across the Northeast mostly, but also some Twin Cities venues as well, including Northern Green Expo and Northwest Sports Show and others. Just one other tip and trick. I could talk about displays and how to do them properly, and maybe that could be a training in the future, but don't make your tables look too neat. Make them look a little bit messy. So I was at the state fair many years ago, and a DNR person had been there, and she was very well intended, and she had a beautiful display. I mean, it was really, really nice looking display, but nobody was picking up anything. I asked her, I said, do you mind if I do something with the table? She said, oh no, go ahead. So I kind of messed it up. Stuff started flying off the table. People just love kind of a messy table. They don't want to disturb it if it looks too nice. So I see that we are officially 1 minute over what we said we would do, but I think that we could probably continue on if we have a quorum of people that want to continue to discuss it, but also just want to be respectful of our speakers and of you and our audience, that we're coming to a close here. I'll just take this opportunity and then we can come back to further discussion. Thank you very much for all the speakers. You've made this, I think, quite a remarkable workshop today, and I hope that folks that have attended have learned a little bit about the fundamentals of public outreach, and know and can and maybe engage even better to expand your programs and improve them. And we've certainly heard a lot of success stories in our speakers from statewide with Megan and Zach, and then all of our county partners who've talked about their programs and how they're implementing their AIS outreach. They're all a little bit different, aren't they? But in terms of the overall approach, but the goal is the same. It's about educating adults and youth to help take action to prevent the spread. So with that, Rafa, let's maybe call our workshop officially closed. And if people want to hang on and answer some more questions, we can. And yes, and don't forget the reminder. We've got a couple of in-person workshops coming up where we'll continue networking, which will be the focus.
Can I put a quick plug in? Sorry, I just want to mention you don't have to recreate the wheel when doing all of this. Ask other counties for some of their material, like our AIS game. I will send the PDF to anybody that wants it. You would just have to print it off, and then I can explain the game further with you. You don't need to recreate the wheel. Use resources that people have already come up with. It saves a lot of time.
That's an excellent point, Abby. And if you come up with something, if you have an idea for something, just ask, because it's probably already been done and it's already been probably perfected since aquatic invasive species outreach has been around for 30 years. And just go ahead and ask Rafa and I. And if we don't know the answer, we can ask across the state, but we can also ask outside the state. I've got contacts all across the nation that are doing public outreach, and they have also some excellent materials that they can share that can be adapted or adopted. Great point.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you everybody for being here. Really appreciate it, especially our panelists.
And thank you, Rafa.